Hey there, welcome to my first ever Power Rankings video, actually, of many more to come. This is the post-week 20 Power Rankings for the NA region. An APAC region video will be coming up soon, either later today or tomorrow, so keep your eyes out for that one. But yeah, this is going to be the NA region one. I have a lot to say about these teams, and I don't want to make another 40-minute video by accident, so I'll try and get it done as quick as I can, but no promises. Honestly, I have a lot to say about all of these teams, so yeah, I'll try and get through it. When I look down here, by the way, I'm just looking at a notebook that I have on my desk just to keep notes coming in my head about what I want to talk about and make sure I don't miss anything. But yeah, I'll try and get it done as fast as I can. I know I can go on a bit, so I'm going on now, actually. So with that being said, might as well just get it started. These are all my opinions, by the way, and I would love to see your opinions too. If you have any questions about what my opinions are, or if you want to send me your own opinions, the comment section's always open. So yeah, I'd be really glad to hear some of your guys' opinions too. If you watch this video and you disagree with mine, share me yours and I'll have a look at them. I'd really look forward to reading some. But yeah, anyway, getting into it finally. 13th place for the NA Power Rankings, Washington Justice. I think this is a pretty obvious choice. They really are just not cutting it. they really are not good enough for the league right now. And that might seem harsh, but I don't think it is at all. This team just... They're not good. They're really not good. When you lose to a team that is practically trolling, that being Shock playing Super on a role that he's obviously... not supposed to play, the off-tank role, playing Sigma, and you lose to that, it's really not great. Yeah, there's not much I can say about this team that hasn't already been said. They're just not good enough. I can honestly, truly see this team losing to some of the top teams and contenders right now, like WGS, like Runaway. I can really see them taking L's to those teams. So when that is a realistic thing, you know you really aren't cutting it at the Overwatch League level. And I mean, Janu's trying, but just imagine playing off-tank for this team when your backline and your main tank just seem non-existent. It must be rough. It must be rough. All I can possibly say that they can do to fix it is maybe picking up some new players. I know Mag was rumored to be joining them. I don't know if that's going to work out. I know Manbong was rumored to be joining them. I don't know if that's going to work out. But those kind of pickups are really what this team needs to improve. And from a managerial standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a player standpoint, this team is just not good enough right now. They really need to pick it up. Moving on though, 12th place, a bit of a hot take. This is definitely a temporary position for this team, but yeah, 12th place, the Dallas Fuel. I know it's kind of a hot take given that this is. I mean, this weekend they did perform very badly, but it was also largely not their fault if you've looked into the situation a little bit after it. Decay, as it's been reported, decided that he wanted a break from the game, which is really weird considering that a 2-week break has just been put in place, which to me means bad management. And what I mean by that is if you've been given a 2-week break to just sit and not play the game and relax and just take a breather in a season where there've not really been any big breaks yet, not deliberate ones anyway, it should be used as a break. It's put there on purpose to be break time. It's mid-season break time, right? So the fact that Decay feels the need to bench himself when it comes to match time because he needs a break, it tells me that Dallas was scrimming during this break time, which is, in my opinion, it's just not a good thing. It's just purely bad management to not give your team a break, and I really don't like that. But other than that, I don't really have much to say. I feel like this team deserves a low ranking, both because of how they played recently and because of the whole Decay benching himself, poor management as far as break times go. I feel like they deserve a very low placement, and so I've placed them low. There was a tweet that the Dallas Fuel account made that I think is worth mentioning too. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, but for the most part, it was just Aero on a Dallas Fuel podcast explaining sort of what happened this weekend against the Titans and why their performance was so poor and why they were playing Doha and Onigod when really they just didn't need to be. I think the most disappointing takeaway from this is that on paper, especially during a Tracer Ashe meta, this team should be really good considering who they've just picked up. Onigod has been a very, very extremely good hit scan player in contenders. He's very, very capable. He's proven that he's extremely capable for many years now in contenders. So it's disappointing to see him come up and have such a mediocre performance against what should be a bottom tier team that Dallas should be comfortably putting away. It's unfortunate, and I don't think it's his fault particularly. But hopefully next week they'll, like I said, this placement should be temporary. Hopefully next week Decay will be back in action and we'll be able to see some Decay Onigod being fielded as a duo, which would be phenomenal for this Tracer Ashe, Tracer Widowmaker meta that's going on right now. But yeah, for the most part, just unfortunate for the Fuel, and I really hope that this placement, for their sake, is a temporary one. Moving on to 11th place, number 11, the Vancouver Titans. Pretty obvious placement, considering who I put in 12th place. But yeah, there's not a lot that I have to say about Vancouver Titans. Mostly just that they seem to be getting a lot more comfortable now. They seem to be finding their place in the league a little bit. Granted, it's towards the bottom end of the league table. But the players, I mean, in terms of how they look, how comfortable they seem, how they're playing overall, they seem a lot more comfortable. Particularly Dalton and Shockwave. Shockwave, for the most part, has just sort of slot himself in and being a really, really capable player from the get-go. But Dalton, KSA, and Shredlock, I'd say, are the ones that are really just starting to look a lot more comfortable. They seem a lot more on top of things. Yeah, they just seem good in general. They seem to be doing fine now. The only players that I'm worried about on the team, really, are Rolf and Karkar. They're the ones that don't seem to be improving too much. If I had to say what I think the worst support line in the league is right now, it would be, without a doubt for me, it would be Rolf and Karkar. Just because they don't seem to be fitting in on the same level that the rest of the team is right now, which is slightly worrying. And I think if this team really does want to improve and start breaching into the lower to mid tiers, breaching out of the lower tiers and getting into those mid tiers in terms of power rankings, then they should probably invest in either improving their current support line or invest in a new support line that will perform better. But yeah, 10th place, number 10, the Toronto Defiant. Toronto is another team that I don't particularly have a lot to say about. I think Numlocked has been great for them. They seem to just be vastly a much more comfortable and much better team now that they're running Numlocked instead of Beast. For whatever reason that may be, I think it's mostly to do with attitude, judging by what they've said as an organization, which is weird. A little bit. I don't know why, as a pro player, you wouldn't have a drive to win. Interesting thing going on there behind the scenes. But yeah, Numlocked's come in and they look drastically improved with Numlocked. Coaches and management, I have to just mention this because if you saw on a vast stream, Shore4 made the statement that Toronto were another team that was scrimming the whole entire 2-week rest time, which is just, it's so weird to me. You've been given a rest time and the players need rest. They just do. Otherwise, burnout is going to be very easy to happen, and they need rest. And it bothers me when I see players and teams being given rest time and then they just choose to not take it. It's very weird to me, and it will eventually lead to things like what happened with Decay happening. So and their coaching staff in general is an odd one as well. They barely even have a coaching staff right now. So that's still an issue for me with Toronto Defiant as far as my placements go in power rankings. But for the most part, Zik seems to be a lot more improved. Kariv seems on top of things as ever. Cruz seems to be a lot more comfortable with this team than he's ever been in the Overwatch League before, which I think is a really good thing. And yeah, again, Numlocked seems to be a big benefit to this team. So yeah, overall, slowly improving, but I still have my issues with them. Number 9, a team that I think people would expect to be higher. Number 9, Atlanta Reign. they just don't seem that great to me still, honestly. They seem like a pretty meh team. We saw a bit of Erster this weekend, which was a welcome addition, I guess. Very much a breath of fresh air. But I think he must not have been playing with this team for a while because he didn't really play up to the potential that I know he can play up to. So hopefully soon we'll be able to see them improving a lot more with Erster in the roster. Erster and Baby Bay, again, with this current meta, this current Ashe Tracer, Widow Tracer meta that's going on, Baby Bay and Erster seems like a really fantastic duo that they could have. And yeah, overall, I think should be a good team. Should be a good team going forwards. Should see a lot of improvement going forwards. But they're just not living up to it for now. What I will say about this team is they seem like a team at the moment that, for whatever reason, can absolutely annihilate any team that's underneath them. We saw it with them versus Toronto Defiant this weekend. They can absolutely stomp teams underneath them with relative ease, to the point where they can probably spawn camp a lot of the teams that are underneath them, just because that's how they are. But then when they play against any teams that I'd rate above them in the power rankings, they seem to struggle a lot. They just don't seem to be able to beat them. So Atlanta are in their sort of own subcategory right now that only they can really play in. They seem like a team that is capable of stomping the teams below them and making the games not even close. But then as soon as they get to a team that I'd rank slightly higher than them, they fall apart. And for whatever reason, I think that's going to hold them back for a while until they figure out what's going wrong there. But yeah, Atlanta Reign, pretty meh. Definitely the most middling team on the list, in my opinion. But moving on, number 8, a team that has been living up to their name a lot recently. Number 8, Boston Uprising. Yeah, like I just said, living up to their name recently, on the uprising for sure. They had a pretty poor performance against Philadelphia, to be completely fair. They had their moments, but they didn't look great against Philadelphia, but I won't hold that against them because it is Philadelphia. I do want to bring up how they played versus Paris. Granted, I also don't think Paris have been that great recently, as you'll find out soon, but yeah, for the most part, they're a team that has gone from being easily the worst team in the league to being a pretty mid-table team that I think would comfortably beat any team that I've put underneath them so far. They seem to very much be improving quickly. I think all the pickups that they've made recently have been fantastic. I think the players on their team have been great. Jerry especially. Colorhex has been playing really well for them so far. Myeonbong as well has been absolutely insane on the Ana. Myeonbong has been practically carrying this team, actually. Fusions has looked to improve again. Looked to be improving again. Despite a pretty poor performance against Philadelphia, Fusions everywhere else recently has looked pretty good. Don't mind the voice crack. But yeah, not a great team, but also not a bad team, I would say. They seem decent. Next up, the LA Gladiators. This is another position. Number 7, the LA Gladiators. This, I think, is another one where it's going to be a very temporary position. In their match against Houston this weekend, they seemed a lot... It felt like a lot of their flaws were coming from the fact that Kevster hasn't really settled into the roster yet. He's on 200 ping. I don't know if he is on 200 ping, but I know he's playing on high ping at the very least. But yeah, Kevster, I think, is actually a really good pickup for this team. I think they'll do well in the future with Kevster, which is why I think this is going to be a pretty temporary spot for them. Their biggest issues this weekend, I think, versus Outlaws, seem to be that Kevster hasn't really had the chance to settle into the roster yet. Which I think is fair, given that he would have probably only had like 2-3 days to play with them, unless they picked him up a lot earlier than their announcement, and they've been scrimming with him a lot earlier than their announcement. He can't have had very long to be scrimming with this team, so I think it's completely fair that they didn't look as coordinated as they could be with Kevster in the roster this weekend. But yeah, I think going into the future, Gladiators they have a good layout for themselves. I think they'll do a lot better with Kevster in the future. I think Birdring is still looking great. Cloudy actually looked really good for them this weekend as well. I didn't have many issues with Cloudy coming in. OG still looks fine on the Orisa. Space as consistent as ever. Yeah, I don't really have any issues with this team. I just think they need a little bit more time with Kevster, and that's about it. They'll do a lot better after that. Number 6, the Paris Eternal. I don't want to say too much about this team in this video because I have a whole other video planned just about the Paris Eternal, because I have a lot to say about this team. I have an awful lot to say about this team. I think they have been very disappointing recently, and I think they have some extremely glaring issues with their roster at the moment that need to be addressed. I don't want to go into what these issues are right now because, again, I have a video planned to come out quite soon about those issues. I'm sure you can guess what I think they are, but for now I'll leave it at main tanks is an issue for them, and DPS is an issue for them. You may disagree, but until you hear my reasoning. But yeah, look out for the video coming soon, hopefully this week. Before Wednesday, I want to say this week, look out for that video. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Paris right now. I don't think they're particularly deserving of the sixth place spot at the moment, looking at how they play, and I don't think they will keep that sixth place spot if they keep playing this way, because other teams will eventually overtake them. But yeah, for now, Paris Eternal, 6th place. 5th is a bit of a hot take as well, and another probably very temporary position. I can see them dropping down a little bit soon. But 5th place, for now, at least, the Houston Outlaws. Now, I never at a single point throughout this entire season thought that I would be saying that Outlaws are a top 5 team in the NA region. I really didn't intend on that, and I don't think they're going to be able to hold that position at all when the hero pool is dropped, and going forwards we're going to have to see a lot more flexibility and versatility coming from this roster. But in this hero pool this last weekend, it could not have been more perfect for this team. Every player seemed to just be able to play exactly what is optimal for them. Dante got to play the Tracer. Linksa got to play the Ashe and the Widowmaker a little bit. Hydration got to sit back a bit and play Orisa, which is, you know, a much less demanding main tank to play than either Winston or Reinhardt are. Meko even got to play the Sigma, which we know he's really, really good at. Yeah, everyone on this team just seemed to this meta just seemed to fit everyone on this team perfectly, and I think because of that, they were able to capitalize on it. And yeah, going forward, the big question for this team is, are they flexible enough to last when the hero pool is dropped and there is no hero pool? Are they flexible enough to last in the 5th place spot with that? I don't think so. I think we'll probably in the coming weeks see them drop down a little bit. But for now, 5th place, I really don't see any other team below them being able to play better than them with this hero pool right now. So yeah, Houston Outlaws, 5th place. Never thought I was going to say it, but here we are. 4th place, Philadelphia Fusion. This is a team, we know what I feel about this team. My previous video on the Philadelphia Fusion essentially sums up what I think of them. I don't think they're an amazing team. I think they're a team that has amazing players on the roster, but they still, to this day, a week and a half after I made that video, I was hoping they'd see improvement after the main melee, but I'll be honest, it really doesn't look like they have. They are still a team that tries to brute force their way through matches instead of just playing a coordinated game of Overwatch. And instead of relying on team play, this team relies on clutch play, and I don't like it. I'm really not a fan of it. On paper, this roster is so good. They have everything going for them, especially in a meta like this where they can play double hit scan. Hisu and Carpe. You read that on a roster sheet, you read Hisu and Carpe, and you just think, wow, this team must be amazing this meta, especially when they can get away with playing double hit scan. But they're just not cutting it for me at the moment. Their 4th place obviously is very high. But this team, when I see their roster on paper, they should be higher. They really, really should be higher. And I really would love it if they would just play a coordinated match of Overwatch. If they would just focus down a little bit more on being a little bit more coordinated as a team. I don't mean to say that they aren't coordinated. I don't mean to say that their team play is bad. I don't mean to say any of this. What I do mean to say that compared to the top 3 teams right now, they are not even close to as good in terms of team coordination as those top 3 teams are at the moment. And if they want to get up there and they want to be playoff and they want to be title contenders, they need to improve on that desperately. They can't just muscle their way through every match. They can, sure, muscle their way through the Houston Outlaws. Yeah, they can get away with muscling their way through the Boston Uprising. But against these top 3 teams that I'm about to mention, I don't think they get away with doing that at all. And they really need to focus down on just playing as a team that little bit better. But yeah, that's my take on Philadelphia Fusion. 4th place for sure, but they could be better and they should be better. 3rd place, though, the Florida Mayhem. I think you really can't argue with this one. They are 3rd place in the NA region. They're a damn good team. They are a damn good team. I'm honestly impressed all around with this team. I can't really think of many faults on this roster, to be perfectly honest. They have incredible DPS. Their tanks are playing phenomenally. Gargoyle especially is just popping off on the Sigma. Their backline as well, Gangnam Jin, is going crazy on the Zen. I really wasn't expecting him to play as good on Zen as he did. He really did just go nuts on the Zen. And Chris, where he is falling behind a little bit as far as the rest of the roster goes, he's still doing great. I don't have many issues with him. Obviously, his Lucio is still struggling a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, I don't have any complaints with this roster. The coaching staff too, with Kuki, they're just doing an amazing job. My only question about them is how they play in brawl comps, because it did feel like it did feel like Valiant this weekend was able to shut down their brawl comp pretty easily, and brawl does tend to be the comp that this team struggles with the most. I think it's mostly down to the fact that they can't put Fate on the Reinhardt for whatever reason. They play Gargoyle on Reinhardt, and he doesn't seem great on that role, on that position. But any comp other than brawl, they do amazingly well on. Spam especially, dive as well, they look phenomenal on, and I really can't complain about this team. They look incredible. They really look like they could be a title contender with a little bit more improvement. I can't fault them. Fantastic team. They're doing amazing, and just a little bit more push there, and title contender. Honestly, I can't say much bad about this team. 2nd place is another team that I really cannot say much bad about at the moment, and that's the LA Valiant. If you watched their match against Florida Mayhem this weekend, you know why I'm so high on this team, because god damn, they are good. And it might look like it's just the DPS that are carrying them. It might just look like the KSB and Shaxx show, but it really isn't, because when you look at this team on an individual performance level, yeah, Shaxx is out of his mind on the Tracer, and yeah, KSB is arguably the best hitscan player in the league at this point. He's incredible. But then you see Dreamer absolutely nailing it on the main tank role as well, and you see players like McGravy popping off as an off-tank too, and then even Lastro, Sex Big Dick himself, just completely crushing it as Zen, and Rain as well coming into his own in this weekend and in past matches as well. I cannot fault this team. And I want to give a minute to the coaching staff as well. Packing 10 and Gunba have done an amazing job with this team all season, and I think Unta coming in has been a massive boost for them as well, because ever since Unta's come in, they've looked unstoppable. They really have looked unstoppable. My one question with this team is that because their DPS, Shaxx especially, doesn't have the deepest of hero pools, at least from what we've seen. Shaxx doesn't really have the deepest of hero pools. I'd want to know if this team can last in metas where Shaxx doesn't get to play the Tracer or he doesn't get to play the Reaper, because he seems quite limited to those two heroes at the moment. So my only issue with Valiant at the moment is if the meta doesn't fall into a Tracer meta or a meta where he can get away with playing Reaper, will they still last as a top team? That's the real question for Valiant right now. But for now, as long as Shaxx can play Tracer, and as long as KSP can pop off on the Widow, and as long as the rest of the team is doing amazing jobs on their individual roles as long as they're doing amazing jobs on their individual roles too, this team looks amazing. There's only one team in the NA region right now that I think would actually be able to shut this team down, and we all know who it is. It's number one, the San Francisco Shock. I mean, come on. they're just the number one team. They're the best team in the world right now, in my opinion. And if you saw their match against Paris, you know why. They're ridiculous. They're stacked. They are stacked. It should be illegal in the league. It should not be allowed in the league for one team to have as many standout, phenomenal players as Shock does. I don't know how Krusty has managed to do it. I don't know how he gets away with it. But my God, having that roster alone is incredible. And then you consider that they have probably what is the best coaching staff in Overwatch in general. And then you consider just how good they are in terms of their team play and their coordination. What can I say that hasn't already been said about the Shock? They are phenomenal. They're unstoppable right now. I don't think any team, even though the Valiant are looking incredible at the moment, even though Florida are looking incredible at the moment, I don't even think either of those teams are even close to being as good as Shock are right now. And that speaks volumes because of how much I've just hyped up Valiant and Florida. For me to say that I don't think they're even close to Shock's level at the moment, that should tell you how good Shock are. Shock are ridiculous, honestly. They have the best players almost on every role. Shax is probably a little bit better at Tracer than Striker is, but Striker was putting out an unbelievable performance this weekend on Tracer. They've got the best Reinhardt in the world in Super. They have what is probably the best Orisa in the world in Smurf as well, which just immediately sets them up for being able to play essentially whatever they want as far as tank comps go. And I didn't even mention that they have probably the best off-tank in the world in Choi Hyobin as well. And even after me saying all that, I've still not mentioned Ants on the hit scan. I've still not mentioned Rascal, who is probably the best player in the world in general at the moment. He can play practically every hero to the best level that those heroes can be played at. And that's, again, still not even mentioning their backline of Moth, Violet, and Twilight. Like, this, it's disgusting how good this roster is. And it shouldn't be allowed, honestly. It shouldn't be allowed in the Overwatch League that one roster can be this good. I can't say enough about the Shock. They're incredible. They're just the one thing that I can see ever going wrong for this team is that they might get a little bit complacent. The one way that I can see Florida or Valiant being able to stop the Shock at the moment is that Shock might get a little bit complacent. They might go into a match against Valiant or against Florida Mayhem in the finals of the May Melee, let's say. Might go into a match against them thinking, yeah, we're going to crush this team, it's not even going to be close, and then get caught off guard by the amazing plays coming from Shax and KSP. They might get caught off guard by the high tempo gameplay. But I don't see that happening. I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel to find a flaw with this team. There really just isn't one, honestly. As long as Shock keep their heads in the game, and as long as Shock make sure they don't get complacent, and they make sure that they play at the top of their game every game, they're gonna probably take the title trophy again with not much trouble. There's one team in the whole league that I think could play a close match against the Shock right now, and that's the Shanghai Dragons. So I don't know what else I can say about this team. Honestly, they're insane. I keep saying it, but it shouldn't be allowed to have a roster this good in the league. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Look out for the APAC region video coming either later today or tomorrow. And also look out for the Paris Eternal video coming soon as well. I also said I was going to do a VOD review pretty soon. The plans for that fell under a little bit, but I will definitely be doing it this week at some point. So keep your eyes out for that. That will be streamed on Twitch and then uploaded here. But yeah, other than that, I don't have much else to say. So yeah, cheers for watching.